Elasticity in economics is basically the measurement of how changing one economic variable affects the others. One common measurement can be price. There's three types of elasticity. There's elastic, where the demand is greater than one. We'll look at that in more detail. That's where the consumer wins. There's a unitary elastic, where it's equal to one. And then there's inelastic, where the slope is less than one, and that's typically where the producer is benefiting there. Now, what I've got here is a formula, and we're not going to cover the formula. We're going to try to cover the concept, but I'm going to list the formula there anyway. And basically, the concept of elasticity, or the concept, is we're trying to maximize total revenue. So we want to figure out the point, or the price, in this case, that maximizes total revenue. Well, let's look at these types of elasticity. First, let's look at the inelastic demand curve, which we've got drawn up top here, and that's in red. And with the inelastic demand curve, a change in price is not going to affect quantity that much. So if you raise your price, if the producer raises the price, their total revenue is going to increase. Now, on the flip side, we have a green line here. It's an elastic demand curve, and that's good for the consumer, because with an elastic demand curve, a change in price is going to significantly affect a change in quantity demanded, and that's bad for the producer. Let's take a look at this example here. We got Jack's Pizza, and let's say the price is $4.99. Well, $4.99, maybe I want to buy one, maybe I don't want to buy any. In that case, it's not good for the producer. But now let's say the producer drops to $2. Well, now I want to buy 10 or 5, or stock up on it, because that's a good deal. So at $2, the demand is elastic. So if we look at this in a little more detail here from a graph standpoint, at the $2 range we have elastic demand, an elastic demand curve, and at the $4.99 range, the demand curve is a little more inelastic, and not many people are going to buy it at a high price. And the reason why being there's a substitution. Now let's look at who is hurt by adding a tax. Let's say the consumer or the producer. Well, in the consumer's case, if the demand curve is inelastic, they're going to be hurt because the producer can pass that on to the consumer, as the consumer doesn't have any substitution options. While on the flip side, the producer is going to be hurt if the demand curve is elastic, because the consumer has lots of different options to substitute or can get out of that. Now let's shift gears and look at an example of inelastic demand. And what you have in front of us here is a picture of a hospital. And typically speaking, a lot of the products or services that are offered in the hospital are inelastic, because if you have to go to the hospital, it's typically an emergency or something important where you don't spend as much time trying to look for the cheapest cost. In closing up here, let's take a look at some different demand variables and determine whether or not they're elastic or inelastic. First off, let's start out with brand loyalty. Typically speaking, the more loyal consumers are to a brand, the more inelastic the demand curve is, as they won't switch right away when there's a change in price, unless it's a significant change in price. Another item is time duration. Typically speaking, the longer the duration, the more elastic demand is that consumers can switch. Now, in the short term, not so much. It's more inelastic. Consumers can't make switches, or it takes time to make switches. Now, let's look at percentage of income here. And with the percentage of income, the higher the percentage of income, the more elastic demand is consumers only have so much income, so they can only budget so much. Now, going back to the hospital example, we have necessity. If a product or service is a big necessity, the demand curve typically is inelastic, and that the consumer can't make switches. And then the final point, which we covered earlier, is substitution. If the consumer can make substitution, it's elastic, and if there's no substitution available, then the demand curve is inelastic. And this wraps up our brief overview of elasticity in economics. It's basically the measurement of how changing one variable, such as price, affects the other variables. Hopefully this concept makes sense. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching.